Episode 2, Cognitive Dissonance with Gospel. This one is based around a track that I recently did for a client. And the song is The Lord is My Light and My Salvation. It's a song that a lot of people are familiar with, really from all walks of life and ethnicities. In the black church, it's sung like how you hear it in the background a lot of times, and which is why I got the call to do the track. And this track will be also released through my company, as you'll see some pictures of as well. So I just wanted to do a quick take on it. This is a song that we're very familiar with, and in the black church, it's sung to a slow, bluesy beat like the one that you hear. The music has a lot of feeling to it. I remember I can't remember the first time I heard it, but at least thinking back to like feeling the song, I remember feeling that march kind of feel and the bluesy feel, which really lent itself to the emotional aspect of it. And then since the song is, I would say, with the lyrics, "The Lord is my light and my salvation, whom shall I fear?" It's about being confident, and being bold, hopeful, I guess I would say as well. And within Christianity, of course, with the dynamic being the Lord is the light and the salvation, it's feeling like you have that help and like you can stand strong. It really has a bit of a chant like warlike feel almost to it, which I think is another aspect of what allows it to have its emotional impact that it has. Between the blues, the slow kind of march feel, and then the content as far as the message. So, this is one of those things, even myself, even, not being a person that is Christian any longer, it's still one of those things where when you hear the music, I can relate to the blues. The blues is really like one of my absolute favorite styles of music. And it's something that's heavily a part of my style. So I can really relate to the blues, and a lot of people can relate to the blues for that matter. Really, I believe this is why people from all walks of life relate to the blues, because, the foundation of gospel is the blues, and the blues comes out of struggle. The blues comes out of, pushing forward in the face of opposition. The blues comes out of deep passion and pain and, just from hopelessness to hopefulness, And it's so interesting because when you listen to a normal blues song, even if they're singing about like a relationship going down or somebody treating you wrong or something like that, it somehow still has that emotional pull where you enjoy it. And I was mentioning this to someone the other day about a slightly different topic. But it's that kind of contrast as far as dynamic, where you're hearing something that's kind of dark and even sad, but it's so full of emotion that you can relate. And that's the thing that happens with music a lot of times. The emotional aspects of music and the message allow you to relate deeply, which means that even if you believe in the message or not, you still feel it a certain way. And to be honest, I really think when it comes to gospel and Christian music, that this is profoundly the impact, even more than it being always accurate, even more than it being something that is quote unquote theologically sound, because I think that it isn't in many ways. I know that it isn't in many ways, with my research and that kind of thing, and what I've learned, the education that I got. But even with that being said, there's still an emotional pull with the music, and definitely a psychological and emotional pull with the message. So one of the other quick things I wanted to touch on with regard to this song, because I'm going to do this with each song that I do throughout this process, is talk a bit about the lyrics and some issues that I think are there as far as theology, some real problems that we overlook. So without picking apart the whole tune right now, so it's not too long, I'll just go to the part, in the time of trouble, he shall hide me. Now, when I was growing up and thinking about what was labeled the characteristics of God or Jesus, many times it was relating to a number of different characteristics, one being provider and protector. And it's something that many people still relate to today, really heavily, that when they feel safe, if they're religious and they feel safe, they feel that that safety comes as a direct outcome of God, whatever a person's discipline is or whatever a person's creed is. They'll usually see, their God as a protector. And this is something that I too grew up with, and I guess I felt the same way. Yeah, I did. Many times I felt the same way, that if I was safe, that was a result of God protecting me. So the lyric says, in the times of trouble, he shall hide me. Now what I noticed, there's a video, if you get a chance, go to YouTube and type in the answer for everything, dark matter. In this video, what he shows in the form of a cartoon is no matter what the outcome of a situation is, within religion and spirituality, you get to the same conclusion. You come to the same conclusion no matter what the circumstances are. And in this particular video, he uses a scene where there's like a drive-by shooting, and there's a car that drives by and there's a person on the side, and he keeps replaying the same scenario. One scenario, the people are shooting out of the car and the person doesn't get touched at all by any of these bullets, doesn't get hit at all, is not injured in any way. And then you see that the outcome is that, God looked out for this person. God blessed this person. And it's always thinking about the next step, which is that it could have been worse. And this is something that we can definitely relate to just on a human natural level. All of us, those that are religious and non-religious, can relate to the fact that many times we're in circumstances where it could be worse, or where it is worse for someone else, which actually brings up this issue that I'm going to address. So the first scenario, he doesn't get touched at all by any of the bullets. The second scenario, I think, is something like he gets hit by a bullet, but it's not life-threatening. And I think it's something mild. And so then in the story, the people who are religious come to the same conclusion, which is that God looked out for this person. And then I think it just keeps progressively getting worse, to where eventually one of the same scenario again is that he gets killed in this particular scenario. And the answer is still the same, that God is good, God looked out for him in some way. And what he really eloquently shows is that there are different dynamics going on here. And the thought, no matter what the outcome is exactly the same. And he shows how that's a problem. So, and it's something that I thought about in the midst of my transition, when I was really studying and really looking at the world abroad and looking at other countries and looking at other scenarios, third world countries and all of these places, just in the world where things just weren't as good as how I had them in my life or in my world, for other people. And I started realizing, I started saying to myself, how do we consider God a protector or provider when there are people who aren't being provided for? Especially in the case of those people being children, like innocent children who have done absolutely nothing, who haven't even asked to be here. It wasn't even their choice to be here or to be born into the circumstances that they're born into, but yet they're dealing with circumstances where they aren't being provided for. And it made me think about that scripture, never have I seen the righteous forsaken, nor his seed begging bread. And I finally came to the conclusion at some point, and definitely now, this was over years worth of time. I came to the conclusion at some point that with many of these ideas, they just have a particular ring to them. We associate with them in a particular way because of our history and our background, more so than that they actually make sense or are true. And that was one of the ones I thought about because it's like, never seen the righteous forsaken nor his seed begging bread. But yet, if you would consider a child a seed of God or a child of God, any child for that matter, and you know that that child is innocent, it has nothing to do with its circumstances, then we have a world full of children who are seeds begging bread and who aren't getting their bread. We have a world full of people who are quote unquote righteous or even innocent or even just, you take a kid is innocent, like, or you have people who are doing the best that they can and yet not getting the help that they deserve. And one of the things that really hit me about this, we go immediately to the, well, God works in mysterious ways, so there must be something mysterious going on here. But the thing I thought about immediately was like, wait a minute, hold on a second. When I'm in church or if I'm in a situation where I'm myself either talking about how I'm blessed or talking with other people, we're all relating, we're talking about things like, I'm grateful and I'm blessed because I have a job and I have a car to be able to get to work, and I'm blessed because I couldn't find my wallet and I found my wallet, or I'm blessed because I was going to be 10 minutes late and I wind up being on time. Like, just all these different scenarios. And I would say to myself, wait a minute. And we would say, like, that's what shows me that God is a protector and a provider because of how he looked out for me, to be able to, like I said, find my keys this morning, so I wasn't late for work. Now, how is it that we can state something like that and be thankful to an entity that helped us to find our keys, while at the same time there's some child, like if we don't find our keys, we aren't going to die. We might be late for work, we might have to catch an Uber, and it might kind of interrupt the flow of our day. We're not going to die. So while at the same time, while we thank this entity for something like finding our keys, something that's not even a life or death matter, there's some child that is only in need of a slice of bread in order to keep him or her alive. There's some child that is only in need of just a glass or a gallon of clean water just so they'll survive. And I started realizing the rationale. Now, I hope I can find it. If I do, then you'll see it in this video. But one time there was a meme that someone did that was floating around somewhere on the internet with the millions of other memes. And there's a picture that's split in half where the top part is a family sitting at their Thanksgiving table, saying their grace and thanking God for their Thanksgiving meal. And at the bottom, there's some starving children in a third world country. And basically the meme says, with the children at the bottom, no, at the top, I'll start from the top. It says, God, we thank you for just this food that you've given us and just the fact that we get a chance to eat. Now, clearly in this picture, these people had a regular diet where they weren't starving, because even if they didn't eat this meal, their bodies were full and voluptuous and healthy, to the degree of being fed on a regular basis. Down at the bottom, you had emaciated children who were basically, the meme said something like, yeah, go ahead and thank him, like at least he's looking out for someone, or something like that, like something to that extent. And it really caught me. Because I was like, wow, what's going on here is that we're living inside of a bubble in our head of our small world where these theological things make sense. And there's two things going on here. One, which I mentioned earlier, and I'll clarify what I was getting at about the Dark Matter video. In this song, it says, "In the time of trouble, he shall hide me." What happens is when people are in trouble and when things work out and everything works out fine and they aren't harmed or whatever, then they say that God looked out for me and this is why this is true. In the time of trouble, he'll hide me. Then when they're in the time of trouble and when they aren't hidden from the trouble or when they are hurt or when anything else happens, we actually say the same thing, which is, oh, well, oh, we don't realize that these things that we're saying aren't objectively factually true all the time. But we say them and we sing them as if they are. And we literally say, like, yeah, you know, God protects me, or in the time of trouble, he shall hide me. And then when we aren't hidden and when we're in the time of trouble and things go terrible, then we still say in some other way that the entity looked out for us. Even if we die, even if we die in it, then it's still like, yeah, well, you know, he still looked out for me because it was better, you know, to be you know, out of this body, you know, is to be with God. So that's better anyway. Or, you know, we're all striving to go to this other better place anyway. So it's ultimately better. So it doesn't really matter. And we don't understand that that's a contradiction. And there's tons of fallacies like written all over these kind of ideas when it comes to that. It makes no sense in any situation where you have, and we don't even have to use religious terms or use a God. We could use a parent. We could use a parent. Because that, and I love thinking about it this way because many people see God as like, you know, the ultimate supernatural parent. And so when we look at it in these examples, like I'm about to mention, it's, to me, it seems like it's a bit more clear as to like this issue that I'm talking about and how we don't realize that we're doing this and how it makes no sense. So if you take a normal parent, you know, on earth, and you have, that parent has 4 children, and 2 of those children are fed Thanksgiving dinner and are really nourished and everything is taken care of. And the other 2 children aren't they, again, they are in need of a slice of bread just to survive. And for whatever reason, and it doesn't matter because they're children. And when you have an omnipotent entity, whether it be a parent who, you know, and of course omnipotent means all powerful. So I mean more so in the context of powerful enough to do something about the situation, whether you're on a physical level of a regular parent or whether it's a concept of a supernatural parent. The thing is, in that scenario, we have 2 children taken care of, 2 that for any reason aren't. We would not call that parent a provider, a protector, you know, a nourisher, because we wouldn't look at the 2 children that were taken care of and define the entity based off of those that were looked out for. We would actually look at the entire picture. And we would have to define that entity, even if it's that parent, by everything that's going on. So nobody would say that that I was a great father because of the fact that I looked out for my one daughter while not looking out for 3 other children in any way. Nobody would call me a good father. Nobody would say that I was a provider. No, but they wouldn't say any of that. They would say that I was a neglecting parent who, for some reason, was operating in a way where I clearly had the power to take care of more children, but for some reason I was only taking care of 1. And I have to tell you, anybody who the first thing that comes to mind in all this that I'm saying is, well, what's really going on is that we don't know really what's going on. It's just all mysterious, and we don't know why these God is allowing these children to just starve. And here's the problem, and this is when it really goes deeper. And if this winds up being a bit long, hopefully it'll still be worthwhile. Here's when it gets like really problematic. When you have an entity that doesn't have to allow for these children to be born in the first place, then you really have a problem. And it doesn't just get whisked away with the idea of, well, there's something great going on here that we just don't know about. Like, you can't do that. Might doesn't make right, and the whole concept of sovereignty and the whole concept of we're just too dumb to understand these things, it just doesn't apply. It doesn't work. And it's really just a cop out for being dishonest. The truth of the matter is that it doesn't actually make sense. And instead of us just saying that it doesn't make sense, we rather say that it does make sense, we just don't know how. But it causes us to be really just naive and narrow-minded, and it causes us really, in many cases, to not really be the benefit to this world that we could be. I don't think that, you take something like missions trips. I don't think missions trips are helpful because of the fact that, within Christianity, that the concept of Jesus is brought to people who don't know about Jesus, or that's not their way of life. Because for some people, it's just not their cup of tea, challenges the whole every knee shall bow concept. Like, this stuff just makes less and less sense the older that I get, because it makes more sense that, we were in more primitive mindsets when we came up with a lot of these ideas, and they made sense within the midst of tribalism, when you're just thinking about your people and you don't care about the other people who are on the other side of the world or who are not part of your tribe. Like you don't even have time to care. You just have time to care about your own. It makes sense that some of these very like narrow-minded and even selfish ideas will be in play. But in a 2019, 2020 world, it doesn't, except for lack of education and lack of exposure and fear in many ways, fear of even beginning to challenge these ideas. So, but anyway, just saying that to say that, when I look at missions trips, I appreciate the fact that people are willing to physically go somewhere and not just preach about some, a theology, but to actually lend an actual helping hand. That to me is actually the more significant part. And to be honest, if we really realize that a lot of this stuff doesn't make sense, then we would actually be more hands-on. I appreciate the people that are, even those that are my brothers and sisters, that do adopt these religious or spiritual beliefs, because I think that lending a helping hand is important. It doesn't matter who it comes from. But this is just something to really think about. My challenge is this. If you can look anywhere in the world and see someone who is not being protected, doesn't matter the reason, you can't say objectively that the deity is a protector. You just can't, or a provider. Or, I guess you, or, for sake of argument, I guess you could. It just would be one of those things where it's just, some people that are looked out for and their car keys are found, and they get blessings that are honestly like petty. Like, and I have to say it that way, because in comparison, like, yeah, in comparison, if I get an extra $20 or $30 today, for some odd reason, that's great. I could always use more money. The problem is I would rather that $20 or $30 go to like somebody who just is starving and is in need of food. And what I'm saying is that I'd rather that same entity I think you guys get what I'm saying because it just makes sense. It just makes sense. You can't have people getting blessings that aren't matters of life and death while you have people who don't even need great things. They just need clean water. A child just literally needs the same food that we're throwing away. Like, that's it. But yet we'll look at other points in time and say, yeah, this same deity made food just rain from the sky. And we praise it and we go, yeah, look at how amazing, look at how awesome, what a mighty God we serve. So, on this last note, for people who are deeply into apologetics, or finding ways to still, rationalize and say, even though it doesn't sound like it makes sense, it does make sense. I'll leave you with just a few of these points. The concept of sin doesn't wash this problem away. It doesn't fix it. It doesn't make it make sense, actually. Because, again, you can't, first of all, and we all know this is unjust because we don't deal with this on earth. This is the other thing I realize. I'm sorry I'm rambling, but hey, I realize that many of these things we actually don't accept on earth. We don't accept in our actual societies and culture, but somehow we completely flip the script when it comes to our religion or spirituality. And so one of those places is this. One of those places is, the concept of a person having to pay for the wrongdoings of someone else. So in our society, we don't believe in throwing people in jail for things that other people do. We just don't. If your father was a person who was a criminal and did negative things, nobody throws the son in jail for the father. It's unjust, actually. And again, might does not make right. And I have to keep saying that over because that's what it comes down to for a lot of us, I realize, religiously and spiritually. It's more so I don't really understand it. Yeah, it doesn't actually, we don't agree with that on earth, but hey, it's God. God could do whatever he wants to do, and I don't want to get killed by God. I don't want to question, so hey, it's just right. But we don't, again, even if we had an entity like the government on our earth that could do something to us for not agreeing with it, we still don't say that's a reason to agree. We say no, and we realize that we're just going to have tough challenges, but we know that we're in the right. We know that we're morally superior to, this idea. So nobody believes in that. So the concept of sin and the concept of, the reason why all this is this way, the reason why innocent children die is because of, the fact that two people took their quote unquote free will and ate a piece of fruit when they were told not to. Oh my gosh, it's so childish. It's so immature. It's so ridiculous. But yet, in a nutshell, that's our story. And so I have to say for the apologists, no, that doesn't actually get us out of this. You can't look at innocent children and say, it's our fault. It does make sense that they're just dying innocently because, hey, we're just messing up with our free will and we're wrong and it's sin. Because even if that's the case, even if it's the case, because it is the case in reality that a lot of times the way that things are as far as our lives and our world is because of the choices that we're making. 100% sure. But here's the issue once again, and I brought this up to my friend not too long ago, which is this. When you think about that scenario, even in that scenario, and you take a child and you take a parent, and a parent is not doing what they're supposed to do, and so it's equaling ramifications for the child. If you're religious or spiritual, you still believe that above that parent, there's an ultimate parent that can basically intervene and completely just take this equation where this parent isn't doing right, so it's causing problems for the kid, and it can totally, via omnipotence, do things that's in the direct positive interest of this child, regardless of what the parent does with their choices. And when you look at the fact that a child is helpless, when you look at the fact that a child literally has to depend on whoever their parent is, so if their parent didn't make good decisions, then they're just and excuse my language for those that, because I said the F word, is going to negate anything else that I said. I hope it doesn't. I really hope it doesn't. I hope we can be more mature than that. And my apologies if I offended anybody, but I just have to be real. A kid is in a situation with his or her hands tied and completely helpless if they're in a situation where a parent uses their choices that they have and makes terrible choices. And sometimes it's not even the parent's fault because it's where they came from. It's something that was a part of what happened to them in their childhood, which then didn't prepare them to make good choices. Like, this thing keeps going back. And what we're saying here from a religious or spiritual theological standpoint is that that is the case, and there is a parent in the equation that can totally help and totally make everything different for that starving child, or make everything different for that child that is completely helpless. And just for some reason that's just more glorious than what we're looking at. It's just deciding not to and just allowing the child to just starve and die, and this is unacceptable. I don't think that this is the case, actually. So I want to be clear. I don't believe that this is the case. This isn't a thing where I believe in it. I think this is the way it is, and I'm just mad at it. Nah, I don't believe that this is the case. And I believe that more than not, we aren't thinking critically enough about this to realize this. So anyway, there's going to be more. It's been 30 minutes since I've been talking. But I'm going to allow it to be. There's going to be more, I know, because we're going to have, questions and interactions. And I encourage you, if you disagree with me, please, by all means, drop a line. This isn't, I'm not a type of person who is like, hopefully it came through in this video. I'm not the type of person that's about like negative debating and knocking people's, like, I really do support people to believe what they desire to believe. Like, I don't really have a problem with people. Well, I guess I do in some way, but not on a surface. Not because I feel like everybody should have the choice to, as long as it doesn't harm anybody else, to believe what they want to believe, or go about their practices, whatever. But where my concern are the places where it is really, really hurting us, and where we're not realizing it because we're just sold on the idea that it's just good and it's just positive, just no matter what it looks like. It's just true, and that's what I want to help with. So anyway, that's it for today, and I'll see you on the next episode of Cognitive Dissonance with Gospel. Thanks so much for watching. Peace.